Hello, it's Tuesday the 30th of September 2014. My name's Robin Yellow and this is Ecotastic, and with me as always is Mr. Kit Knowles.
Hello everybody.
And you've been travelling this week, extending your carbon footprint by flying in an aeroplane somewhere. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We went out for a week to Estonia as part of a business trip. We were there visiting a factory of high-spec windows and doors, which from a company called Viking, that we import into the UK market for resale. We were there checking out their very fancy high-spec, high-tech factory and looking at how modern passive house windows and doors are constructed, which was quite an experience.
And Vikings in Estonia, so they went north as well as west to England then?
Yeah, northeast as well. Clearly, I have no idea what the link is from the name, but it's a really fantastic company. But the idea is that they split off a much larger company called Rationale 12 years ago, with the remit of trying to bring the cost down and make higher spec units more accessible, basically, and over a wider market across the UK. Being included into the EU push for these high-spec units. So we're partnering with them from the perspective of trying to then make sure that not only are the units available and cost-effective, but also that they're specified and installed and commissioned in every possible way to enhance their durability and performance.
Now, you sent me 167 photos of this trip earlier today, which I was supposed to be sharing on my screen with the viewers, but just quite frankly, there were too many of them, and once you've seen one frame for a double glazing, you've seen it all. Is it double glazing, or was there more to it?
There's quite a bit more to it. There's lots of different window ranges covering everything from double glazing with sort of more traditional detailing, and that comes in sort of sashes and all sorts of other formats. But we go right the way up to the passive house level, which is the very top, and that's obviously sort of more triple glazed, but it's a lot more about the frame technology than glazing.
And you were telling me that there are two different gases between the first two panes and the middle and the other side. What's the reason for that?
The triple glazing over double glazing, the biggest benefit of having that extra pane is it gives you more internal surface area to laminate with these coatings called low emissivity coatings, and that's the thing that makes the biggest difference in terms of the thermal performance of the glass. Of the window, however, it's far more important to consider the frame technology. With regards to the gases, that's got a lot to do with bringing the heat transfer down again. We use argon, krypton, or even xenon nowadays, which are all noble gases, and they're contained within the panes as well. This is a lot to do with prevention of thermal bridging, but also condensation, and that leads to issues with regards to when you get interstitial condensation, you get sort of misting and other decoloration issues. So
yeah, well, we had a double glazing panel which got moisture in between the bits of glass, and it had to be replaced. Now, it was actually 9 years into a 10-year guarantee, so it was fantastic. The company just turned up, took the pane away, and gave us a new one. Now, tell me what's unique about these frames that you've seen from Viking.
Yeah, so the frame technology is everything, because you've got to break it down in terms of heat loss. And when you're looking at a window, the first thing that everybody in the UK likes to do is they like to specify lots of mullions. So if you've got a window frame, if this is sort of 2 meters by 1 meter, if you have lots of mullions going through the middle, making them into lots of individual pieces of glass, which is very common as a traditional format in the UK, that massively ranks up the price and kills the performance of any unit. And if you want to make it worse, you also then have lots of opening lights within all of that. That means doubling up on the framework and also lots of ironmongery costs. So these are really, it's a big kind of learning curve for the UK market, is that Windows, we really need to apply a simplification to it, because by over-specifying with lots of mullions, lots of openers, it really is a fantastically expensive thing to do, and it's awful for the performance.
So bigger windows, is that what you're saying? Less frame, more window?
the ratio, not bigger windows, the same size windows, but a ratio of glass to frame, much higher glass and much less frame, basically.
Why? Because the glass is thermally efficient, or efficient in keeping the heat in and out, and the frame isn't.
Yes, and also the glass seals very, very nicely into the frame, whereas when you're sealing a frame into the frame, in the case of an opening light, that's much more difficult to do. If you look at it from the perspective, you've got a wall, and you've got a gap between the wall and your window frame, there's a point of heat loss there. Air can move between it. So the installation of the frame is really, really important. But also, then you've got a conductive heat loss through the flame, and then you've got a convective heat loss between the frame and the opening light, then through the opening light, then through the spacer bar. The point being that all of these different points of heat loss, if you gather them all together, the frame can make up to, in worst cases, about 80% of the total heat loss through any given window. i.e., when you're focusing on going from double to triple and all the glazing technologies, you're only looking at 20% of the total heat loss, not the 80% whacking form, which is all to do with the frame and the installation of the window. That's where you really need to focus if you want to bring your heat loss down.
Great. Well, fantastic. It looks good. I'm really sorry I couldn't show any photos of 167 double glazing frames, but there you go. I think I've spared our viewers from that. Let's get into the news.
Alrighty.
The first article is from the Irish News, published on the 22nd of September. Campaigners in Belfast and Dublin have joined in a global day of action to coincide with an upcoming World Summit on climate change. More than 2,700 climate events in 158 countries took place around the world, including rallies in New Delhi, Jakarta, London, Melbourne, and Rio de Janeiro. Now, that was over a week ago. I don't think the world has changed in the last week. Do you, Kit?
No. All these things, Earth Hour and all these sort of rallies, it's always good because it adds another few people to the bandwagon of people caring, of people taking action. So it's kind of a cumulative thing. I think it was supposed to be the biggest ever. I'm not sure that I've not actually seen any kind of summary afterwards to confirm whether it was or wasn't. I've got to admit I wasn't part of any of the rallies or demonstrations or anything else.
Shame on you.
I know, terrible. I have lots of colleagues and friends that did get involved, and again, I haven't really spoken to any of them about the actual impact because I don't believe any of them really. It's just a chance for people to get together as well in those type of communities. But I don't know, it's not a negative thing. It's always easy for the pessimists to kind of just focus on it, not actually the world hasn't changed. We are not in a new world after that event, but I'm sure it had some significant benefits to some people.
Well, here on Ecotastic, of course, we're trying to change the world by giving you practical hints and tips on what sort of double glazing to get for your house. Moving on, the BBC reported on the 30th of September 2014, world wildlife populations halved in 40 years. The global loss of species is even worse, apparently, than previously thought, as the London Zoological Society says in its new Living Planet Index. The report suggests populations have halved in 40 years, as new methodology gives more alarming results than in a report 2 years ago. The report says the populations of mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish have declined by an astonishing average of 52%. Can this be true, Kit?
Yeah, absolutely. This all came out of another report, which was the World Wildlife Report. Which is a kind of the equivalent of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. That's the kind of peer-assisted largest global effort to understand climate change. What you're looking at with the wildlife report is the same equivalent from the biodiversity side of things, and so it clearly is stating massive collapse of huge numbers of populations from a species perspective. And the really shocking thing is that it also doesn't include any of the information, I don't think, on invertebrates, and actually that's supposed to be one of the worst hit elements or section of the taxonomy is the invertebrates, and that's from things like deforestation, etc. So yeah, it's quite bleak news, but it's always important for us to be looking at the wider picture. The reason that we're trying to save energy and the reason we're trying to improve on or decrease our resource consumption is because of the change to the climate, is because of future generations and the loss of biodiversity. But it's incredible. You think about millions of years of evolution coming to an end in, you know, somebody's lifetime, 70 years. It's the sort of thing that's quite upsetting, I guess.
Hugger reported on September the 18th that within 10 years every solar city system will come with batteries from Tesla's Gigafactory. Now I'm not going to go into too much detail here because I'm more interested in your opinion on this kit. But Elon Musk and his cousin Lyndon Rive have done a dodgy deal and shaken hands and are going to sell Tesla batteries with photovoltaic systems in North America, so that the energy generated by the photovoltaic systems being sold by his brother-in-law will be stored and can then be played back during the evening. Now, Kit, I know you've got one of these systems, not this exact system, but a system like this in your house.
Yeah, energy management, it's really is the way forward. It's remarkable how many things it impacts, but there's a few kind of headline statistics, which is where the importance of energy management sort of comes to the fore. One is that 85% of all the energy that you generate on your roof, yours in particular, Robin, you have PV on your roof. If you were Mr. Joe Blogg's average UK PV owner, 85% of all the energy you generate, you actually feed back to the grid. Now, at
a government stipulated very low per kilowatt hour rate, by the way.
Yes, well, you're kind of the big six have done a very good job of screwing you out of quite a lot of money, but actually in two ways, and it's kind of a little bit eye-wateringly painful when you realise what you're getting screwed out of. The first is that you buy electricity from the big six at 15.5 pence per kilowatt hour on average. What you get for a kilowatt hour from what the government have managed to squeeze out of the big six, or should I say the big six have managed to nail the government down to, is a wincy 4.2 pence per kilowatt hour. So there's a massive sort of four times difference, really.
And I'm showing on the screen here the price per watt of photovoltaic energy, and you can see this incredible drop down here through 2007-8 to where it is now 2013 at 74 cents per watt.
Yeah, getting very, very cheap to produce those panels. But the point with the 85% is that, and the feed-in tariff, is that you don't actually get a penny for any of the energy you feed back to the grid, unless you have a smart meter in your house, because this 4.2 pence that you get paid is only, you only get paid it if you've got a smart meter. It will be assumed based upon a 50% production figure. So if you produce 1,000 kilowatt hours on your roof, and you fed none of those back to the grid, or you fed all of them back to the grid, you would still get the exact same amount of money paid to you by the government, which is 4.2 pence times by the number of kilowatt hours you produced, in this case 1,000, divided by 2. So what this means is that you're getting paid, if you feed 85% of your energy back to the grid, which you do on average, you're already getting paid for an assumed 50% of it, and you're getting paid 4.2 pence when you have to buy it at 15.5 pence. So you're getting doubly screwed. But that's the real advantage of energy management, because effectively what that enables you to do is, in my house, I flip that on its head. So I actually consume 85% of everything I produce from my solar panels. And the beauty of that is that I feed almost nothing back to the grid, but I still get paid the 4.2 pence times the 50% of what I generate. So you've got a kind of a win-win there. You're buying less of the electricity at 15.5 pence per kilowatt. You're still getting paid as if you were feeding back all the energy that you would have been feeding back. And you get a massive degree of control and redundancy when the lights start to go out, which Ofgem suggests will occur within the next 5 years, rolling blackouts in the UK. Mine will be the only house in the street with the lights still on.
Well, not if we've got anything to do with it. And I'm just showing the Watson Solar Plus, which is the device I use, which glows green on the back when I'm generating more energy than I'm consuming in the house. Now, you've got a very sophisticated lithium-ion system for storing that excess energy and playing it back. When the light goes green, my wife puts the washing on. And that's the way we consume our electricity, is by hand, which is obviously nowhere near as efficient, but a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, we do both of those things, because we also have a system which basically links to my mobile, so it tells me when I'm producing more via the cloud anyway. So we can be putting on our dishwashers and everything else, but you still produce far in excess as you would even if you can manually sort of switch everything on. That's the real joke of it all. Everybody's really focused on maxing out the feed-in tariff, so they always try to hit this 4 kilowatt installation. But the 4 kilowatt installation bears no resemblance to the amount of energy that you require and when you require it. So your peaks of production do not meet your peaks of demand. It's totally mismatched. So energy management is the way to actually bring those peaks in alignment and really make the most out of PV.
So therefore, I mean, this Solar City idea sounds like a good one to me. If Elon Musk really is producing this much lithium-ion storage,
this is
in the pre-show kit, you were expressing less than a positive sentiment about this, though. What did you mean by that?
No, I mean it's a phenomenal investment that he's trying to put in. I was actually referring to his Gigafactory, which is, I mean, it's the ultimate in eco bling, as you can imagine, a $5 billion factory that they're trying to put in there. It's a horrifically massive scale project, but what I was trying to get across is that if he is teaming up with his cousin, the fantastically useful thing there is that he would be able to drive global prices of energy management systems right down. And make it much more applicable to everybody. What's also very, very interesting is if you look at the one economy that's most renewable in terms of its percentage of energy production, it's Germany. And the one downside of having so much renewable technologies tied into the grid for Germany has been that they have real grid instability now, because they're producing way too much energy when, they've got peaks and troughs of energy and demand that don't align again. And so what Germany are trying to do is they're trying to use communities to be able to store their own energy. So again, as society tends towards a more renewable production, you need to have this kind of buffering capacity, either on a grid level or at a micro level, which is in everybody's house. So energy management is going to be absolutely key for us to decarbonize as an economy.
Fascinating. Let's move on. I've got one more article which comes from The Guardian, which talks about the heirs to the Rockefeller oil fortune divesting themselves from fossil fuels over to climate change. Now, I know that investment in green tech is something that you've always been interested in, but you haven't done a lot of. Tell me some more about this story.
My issue with all these kind of investment focuses is that it always feels a bit like the 1990s carbon offsetting movement. It's this idea of kind of paying to maintain an identical lifestyle without having to make any changes, any sacrifices, anything at all. You're just going to put a bit of money there and all of a sudden your problem's gone. The answer is absolutely not. It doesn't change anything at all. I think that carbon offsetting is really, there's still European markets involved, so it's not that it's dead, but from a domestic perspective, from a personal and a lifestyle perspective, it has died a death pretty much. But when you're dealing with this scale of divestment in the petrochemicals from the guys who are the most anciently or historically significant investors, which are the Standard Oil Company, which most of the modern day petrochemical industry has kind of evolved from. The point being that this is quite a shocking article, actually, that these guys are taking $50 billion out of over the next few years out of petrochemicals and putting them into the kind of the counter argument, the climate change side of things. It's quite exciting to see that movement from such sort of invested people in the petrochemical world.
Interesting. Now we're going to move on to Kit's Technology Corner. So I'm going to share my screen so you can take a look at this. These are just 3 systems that, Kit, you got excited about this week. The first one is Saphon Energy Zero Blade Technology. And explain what we're looking at here.
It's quite difficult to explain, and I haven't dug down into it all. I think they're still in a period where they're trying to hide a lot of how it works from the public until, I guess, I mean, I don't know if it's about patents or what's going on. I haven't had enough time to research and delve and see where I can get the information from. But broadly speaking, the big deal about this is it doesn't rely upon impellers anymore. The issue with a traditional wind turbine design is because it rotates, it deals with massive forces in rotational sort of physics, which kill birds, create noise, create vibration, have limits in terms of minimum wind speeds and maximum wind speeds. It's a very complicated technology to get right, and one that stays working fantastically across a wide range of conditions, which of course in the UK we're the windiest country in Europe, but because of that we also have quite extremes, really high wind speeds down to really low wind speeds, and so the idea with this Saphonian technology is that you'd be able to put them up, there'd be no noise, there'd be no dead birds, no vibration, and they'll be cheaper, which is another thing, and cost less to maintain. So it's all rather exciting. I have no idea whether this technology is they also claim to be twice as efficient. I mean, the whole thing sounds way too good to be true, and it's possible that it's, but I'm just saying that I've just learned about it and I'm going to do some digging. So maybe in a later episode we'll look at the results from that.
It looks like a big umbrella to me, but there you go. What do I know? Let's move on to the next site. I've stopped sharing again, haven't I? Apologies. Right. So next up is this one here from Peer Plus Smart Energy Glass. Now there's a little video here you wanted me to play, which I was playing earlier. I don't know whether the sound is coming through. I'm going to mute that. What are we looking at here, Kit?
Okay, so one of the biggest issues that we have, particularly in the UK, not because of the sunny conditions, but because of the level of ignorance to it, is overheating. It's a big thing for the domestic industry. A lot of the kind of new builds or grand refurbishments involve a huge quantity of glass, and quite often the glass is shoved on the south face. You know, people have these south-facing rear conservatories strapped on all over the place. And I have to come along and they ask me to save energy, whereas by putting in so much glass, what you actually do is start to introduce the need for cooling and a massive potential for discomfort during the summer months. And it's a ridiculously expensive thing to design for, and if you combat it with air conditioning, then that's the most energy intensive of any of the different energy consuming actions that you can take in your property. So what this glass enables us to do, not that it's commercially available in the UK yet, it was developed, this is a spin-off from a Dutch university, but it combined 2 really exciting technologies to make an incredible technology. One of the technologies is used already in places of business, in offices, where you can switch a switch and your glass can go from being clear to opaque or clear to frosted. The other technology comes out of a movement called BIPV, which is Building Integrated Photovoltaics. And that's basically where you, instead of having big panels strapped on your roof, you actually use the glass that's the energy generating part of it, and you build that into the fabric of your building, so you can create kind of solar canopies. Everything's much more slimline, organic, beautiful, architectural. It doesn't feel like a building built separately with this kind of technology strapped on. It's fully integrated, fully streamlined, and it's got a huge number of benefits associated, although also an additional cost, as with most of these newer technologies.
So the implication here, of course, on this picture here is that when the window is darkened, it is generating power.
Exactly. It's incredible, because they've got the two possibilities here now shoved into one technology, where I could have a conservatory at the south of my house with loads of glass, and when it gets hot in the summer, instead of massively overheating my conservatory, I can switch this, or it could be automated to switch into a dark mode, which greatly reduces the amount of solar gains, so therefore the conservatory stays cooler, but also it generates electricity en masse.
That sounds fantastic. That looks like a great product, one to keep an eye on. Now, the last one we're actually going to look at is a company called Ventive. Okay, now Ventive here recovers up to 95% of heat normally lost through ventilation, helping you to stay warmer in winter.
Yeah, this is a technology I'm a little bit tentative about sharing as a fantastic technology. I've been doing a lot of research into it, so I'm really sort of down with the technology, how it's working and how it's performing. What I like about it is that it's trying to bridge two schools of thought, two very different approaches to building. So the people in the industry as consultants that I respect the most, they still sit. They can still sit in one of two camps. I'm sat on a camp which is focused in mechanical ventilation with heat recovery, or MVHR, as a technology, which is all to do.
Which we looked at in Ecotastic 03, I think.
That sounds about right, and that's all to do with the heat recovery, and it's got massive benefits with keeping the pressures balanced between inside your house and outside the house, and cutting all this permanent draft. This is a big thing from my side of things. The other camp is focused on passive stack extract, which is the idea of kind of creating artificial chimneys that are more controlled, and utilizing the power of chimneys, or these artificial chimneys, to extract and ventilate your property. The big downside to it is there's no heat recovery, and in my mind the biggest downside to it is that it's by definition not a neutral pressure ventilation thing, so you get this draw of air coming in all over the house to compensate for what it extracts. And so what this tries to do, the Ventive technology tries to do, is it's actually utilizing passive stack as a technology to pump it, so it's fanless. It uses no electricity, which is the biggest downside to MVHR.
Can you just explain passive stack briefly?
Passive stack is a physical principle. It's really simple. If you've got a vertical tube in space and you've got high pressure and high temperature at the bottom of that flue, and low temperature and low pressure at the top of the flue, air will basically travel up the flue, and at some rate, really quite an extract, and it acts as a force. So to put this into perspective, one of your chimney flues in your house, if you were to compare that against a fan that you might have in your bathroom, that fan on boost, you'd need about 4 to 6 of those to produce the same amount of extract power as a single flue, of which most Victorian houses will have 4, 6, 8, 10 flues even. So you can imagine that the power of chimneys to extract is incredibly high. And basically they're utilizing chimneys to extract air from your house and create ventilation. That's what passive stack is. What Ventive is effectively combining 3 things together. It's got the passive stack, it's got a heat recovery element in there, so you're actually recovering the energy like MVHR is, but also the third element, which is rather nice, is it enables you to do all of this utilizing your already existing chimney stacks in the property. So it's got a real kind of sweet spot for retrofit as well.
Superb. That looks absolutely excellent. They're really good technologies. That was a hell of a show, Kit.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, nice one. You've gone crazy. You'll have to take 2 weeks off more often. I think this is obviously, you know, you've had inspiration while you've been away. Well, look, that's the end of the show. A great show, I think you'll agree. So much stuff crammed in. I'd like to delve into some of those companies that we looked at the end in a future show for a deep delve. But until that happens, you'll have to sit and wait. We'll be back, I think, to our usual time next week. So we'll be next Tuesday, 9:30 British summer time for those of you, for those 23 people that are watching this show. That's goodbye from me, Robin Yellow.
Goodbye from me, Kit Knowles.